I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. 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 I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, okay?
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to I'm Sorry, Okay? A podcast where we are watching so much Degrassi. I'm Mary here with Paul and LD. This week we watched Season 1, Episode 10 of Degrassi Junior High, Smokescreen. This episode was written by Catherine Ellis, directed by John Bertram, and originally aired on March 22nd, 1987. In this episode, Rick fumes when he's kicked off of an antipollution committee for smoking. Arthur panics when he breaks what he thinks is a priceless heirloom.
Okay, love that wordplay there with Rick fumes.
Oh.
I mean, you know, sometimes those TV guide writers are getting a little sassy.
I'm sure
Also,
the fumes smell bad.
This is a different team. We've usually got like the Jan Moore Kit Hood duo.
It's true. I think this is the first one that's been written by a woman, but we have had a previous episode directed by John Bertram.
Okay.
Which would have been Nothing to Fear.
I was gonna say, checking the Google Doc, are we?
I'm checking the spreadsheet.
Wonderful.
We run a tight ship on this Degrassi podcast.
Yeah, but now I'm like, now I have to get back to the right tab. But here I am. Okay. Opening scene. So Caitlin, Susie, and Kathleen are trying to get signatures for a petition. Kathleen sees Rick walking in and says, "Well, look what the cat dragged in," and calls him dumb as a post and also the school criminal.
I wrote, "Eat shit, Kathleen," so many times in my notes while I was watching this. It was like literally everything she said. So I wrote like, Rick comes in and asks to sign the petition. I think Kathleen says, "Well, look what the cat dragged in. Eat shit, Kathleen." And that's like, also,
she's just coming at him for no reason. All he has done is walked into school and inquired about the petition that they are asking people to sign.
Right. Also, I know that it's very early, but this is actually my look of the week here, which is Caitlin's outfit. I love her like flannel shirt. It's a very soft butch look. I think she looks great.
Caitlin always has some pretty good outfits. I have a fave. My look of the week is a little later in this episode.
Wonderful.
But spoiler alert, it's also one of Caitlin's outfits.
She's killing it.
Do we know if Rick has actually committed any crimes? Why is everyone calling him a criminal all the time?
I think someone said in like a previous episode that like he'd been arrested or something, but again, they were saying it like it was a rumor. And also, as we know, Kathleen loves to start a rumor.
He's got that like Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You like kind of vibe, you know? His story precedes him.
I feel like it's a lot of classism.
Yes.
Like definitely, and possibly ableism, because he's been held back a grade.
Mm-hmm.
And also, by the way, like being held back a grade doesn't always mean that you're stupid. Like I feel like they show a lot of different scenarios throughout Degrassi's run of different ways that people get held back or have to repeat their grade that aren't necessarily because they've like there's extenuating circumstances in some of them. I mean, clearly Rick was in a very difficult home situation with his dad. Now he's in a better situation with living with his brother. And I feel like Kathleen's just kind of assuming that he flunked because he's stupid.
Yeah.
Right. And he also later on, he says that his brother is a bartender, which sort of implies that he's working nights.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be another situation like we were talking about last week with Lucy, where he just doesn't really have anyone at home necessarily in the evenings. And so for a lot of kids, if you don't have someone kind of like telling you to do your homework, to do your schoolwork, you don't care and you're not going to do it. And so I feel like that's probably part of it. He could have something more like undiagnosed going on where no one is advocating for him, but he actually has some kind of like learning disability. Or it could just be the total lack of like involvement of like parental involvement and
Completely. But then, of course, when Susie says he likes you and he's cute, and Kathleen interjects that he's dumb as a post and he's the school criminal, Caitlin says maybe all he needs is a little help. Which in my notes,
she thinks she can
wrote,
fix him.
Yeah, I wrote, which is unfortunately the mantra of too many heterosexual women, and also maybe he doesn't want help, which we see later. But I think Caitlin thinks that she can fix his life and his entire situation when really he doesn't want it or need it.
Well, and the general sentiment is not incorrect. He needs help. He needs parental supervision. He needs like probably better like just funding for his life. Like he probably doesn't have, I mean, he says like later on, there's like a lot of things going on with like his social, like economic status that are like a detriment to his life. So he does need help, but maybe not from a middle school girl.
He doesn't want it from his crush.
Yeah, he doesn't want his peer to try and like rehabilitate his image.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing, is Caitlin's not trying to offer him help because she thinks like he needs help. It kind of seems a little bit like she's like embarrassed that like, her friends are judging him and she likes him. And instead of standing up for him and being like, well, you don't even know that he's a criminal. How do you know that he's dumb? Like instead of standing up for him, she's kind of just like, well, maybe he just needs help. Maybe I can fix him.
Right, like Vula would definitely be more like, let me help this person with their schoolwork.
Exactly.
And that's like genuinely, right, how can I practically help this person? But yeah, Caitlin is definitely, her motivation seems more selfish and not actually about Rick or what he like might need.
Okay, I would love a Vula-Rick interaction.
Yeah, Rick needs Vula in his life. I did also want to point out he has like a new haircut, which is sort of like an angled bowl cut, and it is very good. As usual, Rick is like killing it. I totally get why like Caitlin has a crush on him.
He's cool. He's also like, he's really nice. Like he's like, he's got a bit of an attitude when people judge him or like give him an attitude, but in general, like he's just like a nice guy who's interested in what people are doing. When he won the lottery or whatever, he gave everyone licorice. Like I've referred to him as Comrade Rick so many times in my notes. Because he is like, he talks about class in this episode. He's great. And
he's a really interesting person. Like the more we hear from him, he's like a lot more interesting than some of these other people whose problems just like, are like actually made up.
He's very interested in direct action, like community organizing. He's great.
Oh, and we'll get there.
We will get there.
And Susie is actually always kind of cool too. She's always just like, Kate, like, oh, there's Rick. Like she's always just kind of teasing Caitlin, but in a friendly way, not in like in the way that you would be excited for your friend about their crush.
But like Kathleen's so judgmental, and I feel like she really casts like a shroud over the entire conversation. Like it's not the first time in this episode that I wonder how Kathleen has so much unchecked like social power. And also not the first time I've wondered that in this series in general. I hate Kathleen.
I mean, I think in some ways, especially coming from elementary school into middle school, she just has that attitude that like sometimes the person who's the loudest just naturally like gets their opinion heard the most. But yeah, they're not actually talking about any specific actions or anything that Rick's done. It's all just like gossip about, things that they've heard about him. So they're not even responding to anything that he's done in this moment. He's literally just like walked up and signed their petition.
Yeah, he's interested in the thing that they're doing, and he immediately gets judged.
So over in Miss Avery's class, Susie is giving a presentation about her uncle, who is an astronaut, and gave her a NASA emblem that he wore in space. Next week, we'll hear about Yick's family. Everyone is super hyped on Susie's presentation. Rick didn't hand in his assignment, so Miss Avery gives him the old Miss Avery classic hand on the shoulder.
The old Biden touch.
Rick leaves class, and I'm assuming this is the assignment about family, so it kind of makes sense why he hasn't done his, and he punches some lockers on his way out, which we didn't really mention earlier. He does have some angry outbursts in this episode.
Yes.
But they're all like white man punch wall kind of outbursts. They're never like directed at another person.
Yes. He is like internally angry.
The old Andrew Bernard.
Yes,
oh my God,
exactly.
Yes.
So Yick is talking with Arthur about his presentation, and he doesn't think anyone cares about refugees and that everyone will think his family is boring because they're poor.
Yick.
Oh, Yick.
Yeah.
Oh, Yick.
My question every week is, why are Yick and Arthur every B plot? Can we not hear from someone else?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some Yick and Arthur fatigue at this point. This isn't even like a particularly bad B plot, but it's just like enough.
It's got that classic like slapstick misunderstanding kind of element, but I think at least this one's got more of a message. Like it's definitely like another class issue.
Well, it's
Right.
just like your family history is like beyond what anyone else's like family history, like the like quote unquote normal like elements of that. Like Rick like doesn't have a stable family, but all the pieces are there. But like Yick's situation is like off the chart compared to that.
I mean, I even remember when I was a kid, we had to do like a family tree and we had to talk about like where our family came from. And I feel like this was in middle school, but it could have been like late elementary school. And like I was talking about the fact that like my family came from Eastern Europe. We all came from Ukraine and Poland and Lithuania. And I remember someone just like bursting out and being like, Lithuania, is that even a country? Like,
What the fuck?
yeah, which like the answer, by the way, is, yes. Yes. But I remember just feeling like really stupid. Like because no one else in this class had everyone else was like English, Scottish, Irish, German. Like no one else was. I think one person was Greek, but that's like, that's cool somehow. I don't understand who decides which European countries of like ancestral origin are cool. But apparently like the place where pierogies and borscht comes from is not cool. But you know what I mean? And so like, I mean, this must have been like grade school because it was like mid 90s. It was like, damn, these countries have barely even been countries. They're not part of the USSR anymore. Give them a break. But I think that like people make other people feel very weird for stuff that like really isn't weird. And it wasn't until I moved to the UK that I was like, oh my God, other Polish people, other Lithuanian people. Like there's an entire like Lithuanian contingent in Glasgow. And you know what I mean? It's totally different.
I mean, like, since I was adopted, I remember doing that in, like, I think it was, like, 6th grade, like, yeah, like, around that time. And so I just, like, I remember not even knowing what to do for those family tree stuff because I was like, I don't know my birth parents. So, and yeah, they'd just be like, well, just do it for your adopted parents. So everyone is like talking, like you said, everyone is just talking about like, my parents are from Germany. And it's like, yeah, clearly. But so when I say that, it's like clear, there's like a disconnect there. And so it was just like confusing basically.
Yeah. And you grew up in a very white suburb. And I can imagine that there was then even more of a disconnect because you didn't even have like other like Colombian kids in your
It was
class.
it was like me and maybe a black kid, but I don't think he was in the same class as me any year. We just like knew each other.
Yeah, it's hard because kids at a certain age are very amenable to differences, and then at some point their parents start to kind of feed into the way that they view other kids, and then also like at some point kids stop accommodating differences. Like it
Mhm.
starts to become everyone must be sort of a cohesive unit. And so I think we're seeing that a lot in this episode. Like Yick feels like he's very much like out with the norm of everyone's experiences.
Mm-hmm.
He says something about like boat people, which like that sounds like it must be a
Mhm.
slur of some kind. I don't know, but
Mhm.
like that was like it felt very negative of him to be saying that about himself at the
And
least.
you would assume that someone had said that to him at some point.
Right.
Right.
And-
He's like internalized it.
Yeah, and obviously like Rick is going through the same thing. Like he knows that people are judging him. Like he knows that people like Kathleen look down on him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the default for these sort of assignments is basically what y'all are describing, and is basically my experience, which is my family is Czech and Swedish and Irish, like check, 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 assignment done. But there's not really a lot of space for, you know, the fact that other people like their family origin story is different, or it might be a little bit more traumatic or difficult to explain, or it can make a kid feel like an outsider. And the assignment isn't really meant to highlight differences. Even though this is Canada, it feels very like melting pot. Like the message is supposed to be, and we're all part of the same melting pot. But it doesn't really make you feel that way. It's sort of the limitations of like that kind of thinking.
I
Yeah.
kind of wonder if those assignments are still being done. Like I'd be very like I don't know, obviously. I don't know any kind of like school age kids. But that kind of thing really interests me because yeah, I do feel like they're not a really they're not a comfortable space for any marginalized identities.
Sure.
It feels like it's maybe supposed to highlight difference, but in a different way, like in a way where it's yeah, we're all celebrating that we're all here and we're all part of the same human race and all lives matter. But you know, it then becomes kids teasing kids for not being part of something or being different.
Susie's highlighting a celebrity in her family.
Yeah, so it would feel boring, I guess, for Yick. And also it's not like even though like it's an interesting story, you know, for him it sounds like it was a really difficult time and
Yeah, he doesn't want to relive this shit.
He's young. They're basically asking him to relive his childhood trauma.
Yeah.
But I will say that Arthur, the entire episode, Arthur's like, it's a great story. And Arthur's like, we'll get into the rest of Arthur's behavior, but his like support of like Yick's origin story is like very sweet and sincere. And he's like, it's a really, you know, like he's always very supportive, and he's like, thinks the total opposite of Yick. He's like, you actually have a really interesting story. But yeah, of course the kid who that makes him feel different, he's not gonna like see it that way.
Yeah, I do think Arthur's a very good friend because he's not like, I don't think he's being too overbearing. Like I don't think, you know, it doesn't feel like he's like, well, you have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, oh, you should tell that story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
The last thing I wanted to say about this scene is that there's an announcement that today's lunch special is tuna surprise.
Oh yeah, that comes up later.
It does come up later.
I wrote it down.
So in the next scene, Rick rolls up to the Environmental Action Committee meeting, and Kathleen is immediately like, "What are you doing here?" Even though this is an after-school program that is presumably open to everyone.
She says, "What do you know about the environment?"
And he's like, "I live in it."
Which is very accurate.
Pew, 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 pew. Got her.
Oh, Rick is like not here for her nonsense. He is the only person who like stands up to Kathleen, and he's basically just like, who is this?
Who
Why
are
are you
you?
coming for me? And also like, please, like you're gonna step to Rick, Kathleen. Come on.
And Caitlin says that he should be allowed to join because he signed the petition. And she's like, well, that shows that he cares about the environment. Everyone else agrees.
Right.
So Kathleen kind of like does in this moment have to eat shit and just like let him join.
Yeah.
But like, she's just such a butthole about it.
Just immediately. She's so rude to this kid. She's very hostile, but everyone seems to like, I feel like that is kind of how you would feel about Rick. Like he's kind of a wild card. So this group is clearly pretty boring. And so I think everyone's a little bit stoked that Rick shows up actually. So top of their agenda, they discuss changing the name of the group. Somebody suggests Pollution Busters.
Awful.
But Kathleen says she likes the old name, and not just because she thought of it, but absolutely because she thought of it.
And then she just says no and moves on. Like,
Yeah, this is the only part where I can kind of hang with Kathleen. Pollution Busters sucks. Environmental Action Committee is obviously a better name. Move on.
EAC.
Shut up.
I'm not mad at Environmental Action Committee, EAC.
Why do they bring up
but
a new name every time?
It's
Because
always the only
Kathleen-
thing on their agenda.
I mean, Kathleen decided it. So I'm sure it was just kind of one of those things where she's like, hi, everybody, welcome to the Environmental Action Committee. And then everyone was like, when did we get called that? And she's like, now. I feel like it's probably on the agenda because everyone really wants to change it. And she's just like, no. I will agree that it's the better name, but I also do
Yes.
think you need to give democracy a chance.
Yes, it's never explicitly stated, but I get the feeling that Kathleen founded this group and that's why she has like ownership over every aspect of it.
Sure.
She sucks. So after school, Yick is walking home, and then he gets a brilliant idea, and he sees a vase in a store window, and he decides he can buy that and pretend it's a family heirloom. Wow, I really wrote a bad description of the scene, I think, because I just wanted to get through it. Here's exactly how I describe this. Yick buys a vase and pretends it's a family heirloom, but Arthur is too nerdy for this lie and says they should have it appraised because his father knows an antique dealer.
I actually think that's a perfect summary of the scene.
Well, I didn't include the details about where he was walking home and whatever.
Doesn't matter. You've
Also,
gotten
I
all
believe-
of the main points, and
Yes,
we
those
have
are-
nothing else to say about it.
The only other thing I have to say is Yick would maybe say that he bought a vase.
Yes,
Oh
a
yes,
vase.
they do
This
say a
is
vase.
more zany schemes from Yick, but I would still say his most understandable to date. He's nervous. He doesn't want to do this shit. These
I get
assignments
it.
suck.
He just wants to have something cool to show.
Yeah, dude.
But also, why does Arthur's dad know an appraiser?
Who knows? Those
Okay.
Kolowskis are getting their fine Polish antiques appraised.
Yeah.
Apparently.
They're like
a very close
Soviet
family friends.
Soviet era furniture.
It's also kind of like Arthur's obsession with having it appraised. It's like, we don't need to know how much it costs. Like, it has, like, as far as he knows, it has this like family legend and like lore behind it, and he's just like, oh, let's see how much it's worth. Like, way to be a capitalist, Arthur.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, hey, maybe you want to know where this is from, because Yick is like, I was dying when Arthur was just like, so what dynasty is this? And Yick is like,
I don't know.
oh man.
Doesn't he say like, Ming?
I fucking love that. That's relatable. But yeah, I think Arthur is just sort of like, he's like into it and he's trying to be encouraging. And then I don't know if you were like talking about throughout the episode, he's obsessed with it, but he's like covering, right? Like
Right.
It's
Then
true.
it
He
becomes,
really-
it becomes part of his lie.
Yeah.
He really only kind of suggests it the one time, but then he
Yeah.
has to stick to it.
Yeah.
But it just
Leave Arthur
feels
alone.
excessive. So back at school, there is another announcement that anyone who had the tuna surprise at lunch should see the school nurse before going home.
Wow. Okay. I missed all of this, by the way. Incredible.
I love this.
I just love like a tuna surprise or like a tuna noodle casserole. But like, yeah, what a bummer if it makes you sick.
I
Surprise.
love
That's the surprise.
I love a tuna noodle casserole.
So Caitlin finds Rick after school and she asks if he wants to help her with an announcement that she's gonna make about the petition. And she invites him to come over to her house.
Can I just
and
say,
I think she says it would be a great way for him to get involved.
can I just say that this entire time they're so vague about what specifically this petition is, and they keep just saying the factory. Where she's like, "We'll pass the factory on the way to my house." Like,
Yeah.
I understand it's about pollution, it's about a factory, but they haven't
Yeah.
tied all the pieces in. They have not connected all of the dots.
Did we also miss, did you want to discuss the utilitarian props from if we go back to when they're originally signing the petition?
Oh, my utilitarian prop of the week is actually in the next scene.
Okay. We'll get there then.
Mary had her own utilitarian.
Ooh,
prop, I
yeah.
suppose.
Well, I can't remember what it said, but I think it just said, sign the petition.
Oh, that's pretty
It
good.
was like hanging from the table.
No. I've opted for something more on the nose.
Okay. So speaking of signs, in the next scene, Arthur is trying to take down a sign that says, Honesty is the best policy.
That is
from
my utilitarian
He's
prop of the week.
Anonymous.
Arthur is such a nerd. He's helping to change the quote of the day in the classroom, which, like, oh my
Yes.
God, it's like I'm pretty sure I remember staying behind to erase the chalkboard. Like, I've been there. I
Oh,
know.
of course you did.
Come on.
Wow. Oh, little angel baby Paul.
I can help.
Can I help you with
anything? And then you get to use the wet sponge to clean it off, bro. And then it's like, it's beautiful. The chalkboard is pristine.
And that's a whole new chalkboard.
Yeah, bro.
You'll throw your back out trying to do it yourself. Let me help.
Let me help. Oh,
But
yeah.
you were probably like 3 feet tall, so you weren't that helpful.
I had to stand on a chair, I'm sure. You go up and down. You go up, down, and then you scoot the chair over. Up, down, and then you scoot the chair over.
Well, Arthur does not have a chair to stand on, so instead he tries to move the desk over, and then he accidentally breaks Yick's vase.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no.
And then he leaves a note on the freshly cleaned chalkboard saying that he took the vase to an appraiser.
Oh, buddy.
Which
Oh,
seems
buddy.
like psycho. Like, from Yick's perspective, you just walk back into the classroom and then someone's just like, oh, you know that thing that I asked if you wanted me to do and you didn't want me to do it? I did it anyway. Bye.
Also, this thing is a precious family heirloom as far as I know. I stole it.
Yeah. I stole it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very bad lie. I feel like I wrote the sign says honesty is the best policy, which is not only astute, it's also my utilitarian prop of the week.
Oh, I
It
love
is
it.
astute.
So after school, Caitlin and Rick pass the factory on the way to her house and they start talking about pollution. And Caitlin just keeps accidentally saying the wrong thing. Like Rick is talking about how, he could there's a smell from the factory. And so in the summer, he couldn't open his windows. And she's like, why didn't you just get an air purifier? And he's like, bitch, I'm poor.
He's like, do you think my dad could afford an air purifier? And she's just like, oh,
She's
sorry.
like, oh, sorry.
I like it. Like, when you're that age, you're like learning about like people that have different, like, not backgrounds, but like, yeah, they're in like totally different situations from you, and you don't totally get those elements of like, I don't know, like her, we find out her family is rich, and so like to her, that's not
but
like
she's
that
not
big
even
of a
aware
deal.
of it.
Yeah,
Right,
she doesn't.
exactly.
She's like, oh, I don't think my parents are rich.
Yes.
I really relate to Caitlin in this way. I've also often said the wrong thing in the same kind of way of trying to be helpful, but just not really like thinking through something. And she does, she always apologizes. And so that's why I think it's like totally, it's okay to be wrong if you're kind of willing to like own that, which she is.
Yeah, I often am what I call aggressively helpful.
Yes.
Which is what other people would call bossy, but I often am making suggestions that maybe are not within the realm of possibility. And, you know, I think it's just about understanding like what people's limitations are and what's within their reach and apologizing when you overstep.
Well, and if Caitlin really cares about this issue, she can't just assume like who's affected and how they're affected by it and what they can do about it. So it's a good perspective for her to hear like what someone who's actually, it doesn't sound like the factory's on the way to her house, but it doesn't sound like her immediate area is affected by the factory. So it's good for her to get the perspective from someone who actually seems to like live near this factory and experiences like the consequences of living there.
Yeah, man, she needs to go Aaron Brockovich on this shit.
Yes. So they get to her house and like Caitlin is totally like setting a vibe. She's like playing music. She's making them some snacks before they start working on the announcement together. And the two of them are just sort of like talking. Cause yes, this is where Rick is like saying like, wow, your family must be rich. And Caitlin's just like, oh, they're just teachers. I don't know. Well, my mom is the principal.
They're just upper level admin at the school.
Yeah, and her house is like very nice. But yeah, it's just something she just hasn't thought about because she hasn't experienced, you know, anything outside of like what she knows.
Well, look at who else she hangs out with. Like she's hanging out with other people who are all generally the same class as her.
Yeah.
Right.
Or one would assume based on the fact that Rick is such an outcast.
Right.
Like it seems like they don't really know very many working class kids.
Yeah. So she kind of reads the announcement that she has so far, and Rick says that it kind of sounds like a teacher. And he's like, you know, all announcements all kind of sound the same, and if you really want people's attention, you have to be different.
I'm not prepared for this difference.
Well, it leads us to the next scene at school. Rick and Caitlin show up to do the morning announcement. They've brought the boombox from Caitlin's house. Rick drops a beat, and then Caitlin does an environmental rap that I feel like honestly kind of rules, and it ends with make some noise and stop the stink.
Okay, so in my notes I wrote, okay, first of all, question mark. Despite Caitlin's baby voice and unyielding whiteness, she nails it, baby, and I love this
She totally
for her.
does. Yes.
But like, why does her voice go up like 7 octaves when she does this rap? Like, why is she doing
probably
it in
because
this
she's
weird
nervous.
voice? No,
Yeah.
Caitlin, no.
My note says, "We are the Bears shuffling through."
We are the Bears shuffling through, shuffling on down, doing it for you. We're so bad, we know we're good, blowing your mind like we knew we would. You know we're just strutting for fun, strutting our stuff for everyone. We're not here to start no
I
trouble.
absolutely
We're just here to do the Super Bowl shuffle.
absolutely thought of the Super Bowl shuffle.
Oh yeah, this must have been 2
I
or
have it
3
on
years
vinyl.
after. This must have been like 2 or 3 years after the Super Bowl shuffle, because that was like 85.
It was the 85 Bears, which I know
Yeah.
because obviously 85 is the year that I was born, and I believe that I was born to bring the Bears to victory.
Oh yeah,
I manifested it.
yeah.
Well, and it's very much
strong Super Bowl shuffle energy.
yes,
basically.
this is like when, you know, rap is starting to become like popular, and it does very much have this like vibe, this like kind of more speaking, you know, like people obviously like everyone's flow is a lot cooler now. But this is sort of like the beginning of that. So like I like that Caitlyn is getting in on this and she kills it.
She does kill it. It's got very like, my name is Caitlyn and I'm here to
Yes.
say, like, kind of energy, but like, but it works. And then everybody is
The
The
stop
people
the stink
love
mania.
it. Yeah.
everybody is signing that petition.
They can't wait to sign the petition.
They're passing it around. They're telling their friends. They have done a successful
They've
marketing
gone
campaign.
viral.
Yes, they've gone Degrassi viral.
Rick is like, he's relishing it. He's feeling himself. He's like, hell
And
yeah.
And he's just happy for Caitlyn. Everything he's doing is like to help Caitlyn, and he doesn't need any kind of like, you know, like personal credit or like whatever. He's just like, all right, Caitlyn's interested in this thing. I'm going to help her do this.
Yeah, he doesn't want any kind of recognition. He really just wants to help her. But also, like, his ideas are so organic because he just knows
Right.
what would grab his attention. He knows what he thinks would make a difference. And he's thinking outside of the box a little bit. And that does come from the fact that he's got a different background from everybody. And maybe he
Right.
learns differently than other people. He's really trying to help.
And yeah.
And he's nailing it. He's like all about that direct action.
Yeah, and he, you know, Caitlyn's maybe being a little too serious about it, right? Like she's writing out this like serious announcement, and you can see why someone would go in that direction, but he's almost like, you need to make this more fun if you want people to be into it, which is like so real.
It's super true. And like obviously like she's the kid of teachers. So she maybe is a bit more academic, a bit more studious, and maybe her writing is a bit more like that because her parents are teachers. So when he says it sounds like a teacher,
The first line that she reads, it's like all kids need to. It's like very instructional and like,
Right.
ugh, blah, blah.
yeah, exactly. It is the worst, and Rick elevates her. Like it's honestly, it's like the Degrassi version of those like red, white, and blue portraits of Obama in 2008. Like that like went all over. Everyone had them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's hope and change, baby.
Hope and change.
Hope and change. Neither of which
Yes.
happened.
Also, it's actual action
Yes, exactly.
for
It's
their
not just an agenda.
environmental action group. All right, so when Arthur sees Yick at school, he runs into the bathroom and then talks to him from behind the bathroom door.
The way that Arthur runs into the bathroom, it's like in the cartoons.
Arthur, you know, Yick is like asking about where the vase is, and Arthur is insisting that he's getting it appraised, and everyone is very worried. Arthur's like worried that, you know, he's like destroyed this family heirloom, and Yick is like worried because he's got to do this presentation and this is his only idea. So at the next EAC meeting, they're talking about changing the name again. It seems to literally be the only thing on the agenda, which as someone who has to attend these types of meetings for work, this is actually like painfully real that the same thing is just on the agenda every meeting and you never actually like make a decision about it.
Yeah, this really tracks for me. I have a weekly team meeting for work, and we always, like, our first point of the agenda is to go through last week's actions that we kind of assigned to everybody. And there's ones that have been there since like February, and we're in October right now when we're recording this. So it's too real.
Just keep it on the list, baby.
They're getting a taste of what adulthood is really going to be like.
Yes. Bureaucracy. So Caitlin wants to talk about the petition because now they've got like a ton of signatures, but Kathleen is just being like a total asshole, and Rick calls her a brain box.
A fucking brain box.
Yeah, Caitlin's like, what about the petition? Then Kathleen's like, what about the petition? And then Susie's like, we have almost 200 signatures. We should take it to the factory. And Kathleen's just like, nobody's going to pay attention to a petition from a bunch of kids. And it's just like, well, why are you running this club? Like,
Yeah,
what action
is the purpose of this club?
Like, I don't understand what it is that she thinks they're doing or what her intentions are or anything. It seems like she's only there so that she can be in charge of something.
I mean, yeah, I think that is why some people get involved in these things, and like she just wants the power of being in control.
But then Comrade Rick is just like, it's called action, doing something, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, Kathleen then is just like, well, you know, I still think it's a stupid idea. And God, eat shit, Kathleen.
But he's already kind of converted Caitlin and Susie. They're kind of on his side.
Yeah.
And so, but we'll get back there later because first we see Arthur is trying to glue the vase back together and it looks terrible.
So basically when I saw this scene, all I could think about, and I know this is like maybe not a great reference, but it reminded me of the pilot episode of Bones when Dr. Temperance Brennan is like gluing a skull back together. And I just kept thinking like, Arthur would not make a very good forensic anthropologist. Like,
he's not doing a very good job.
He's doing his best, but his best is really not very good.
He just doesn't seem like the kind of person who would like fine details would be his strong suit necessarily.
Can relate.
So after school, Susie, Caitlin, and Rick go to the factory, but they're standing outside and the girls are like, maybe we should just mail them the petition instead. But Rick gets all aggro and he's like, come on, like we're already here. So then
he's
they're
super
there.
into direct action.
Yeah, and he's also just like, what are you afraid of? Like, let's just go talk to them. Who cares? So they're sitting in the waiting room. Or in the lobby, and then some Pete Buttigieg motherfucker comes out and he just like totally bullshits these kids and he basically calls the media fake news.
I put that in my notes.
Susie says something like, well, the newspaper said whatever about pollution, and he's like, the media's always got an agenda.
They love a good story.
Yeah, they love a good story. So he's really just like putting them off. He's kind of like, wow, it's really great you kids are like getting involved, but he also doesn't care about them. Rick is like about to knock this dude out and he says this place stinks.
Well, the guy is like, so he's like, the media loves a good story, but there's no proof that we're polluting. And Rick is like, proof? This place stinks. Love it.
And then he says that the guy's basically like, y'all can go now. But Rick is like, we'll wait to speak to the president. But Pete is like, nah, bye dorks.
Yeah, he just snatches their petition. But also, can I just say that when they give him the petition, they're just like, we want the factory to stop polluting. And it's like, dude, you need to... I know that they're only supposed to be like 13, 14 years old. So like, fine. You know what I mean? They don't have like any kind of like measurable
list of demands
goal. Yeah. But like this is their first time doing this. But I'm also just kind of like, come on, guys, you want the factory to stop polluting? That's
well, and like you said, they just keep broadly saying that it's polluting. But
they're not like,
they don't have a specific like thing to point to.
They haven't even told us what kind of factory it is. Like,
it's
just like, what do they do there? Tell me more. What is the smell? I need to be taken on like a sensorial journey.
True. It would be nice to have a description of the kind of smell that we are dealing with.
I'm very details oriented.
So they leave the factory and the girls are trying to be positive, like, hey, at least like, he took the petition, like maybe something will happen. But Rick is pissed and he literally kicks a can in anger and like storms off.
But also Caitlyn like totally tone polices him and she's just like, you didn't have to be so rude. And it's like, well, this guy is being
Right.
super patronizing to us. We're coming to him with something that we've worked really hard on, and all he does is tell us, that the media lies.
Rick's been
Yeah.
dealing with the fucking Kathleen bullshit, and now this little sniveling worm, like Uber Kathleen, like comes up and is like, wow.
He's the Kathleen like final boss.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the Pokemon evolution of Kathleen.
And he's just another person who's just like not taking them seriously and who's not taking Rick seriously.
Yeah. And so like I really understand his frustration here. And again, like of course, like it is startling when you're with someone who then has a bit like of an anger sort of like outburst.
Mm-hmm.
But also like he didn't direct it at them, like he didn't actually yell
No.
at them. I'm not saying that like it's okay that he's like expressing his anger in a way that's
Physically.
yeah, that's physical. And I think that like as like a 13-year-old girl that would be I
It
think
might
like
be kind of scary.
scary. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like so I totally understand it, but I'm also just like I'm not sure that like telling Rick he was like rude to the suit, you know what I mean, is productive either.
But it's also very much like, girls are taught to not express anger. And
It's
so, yeah, she's kind of policing him in that way. Like, this is an adult, like, you can't talk to people like that. But yeah, Rick is sort of like, these people, he's not respecting us, so why do we have to respect him?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So apparently he goes to cool off and have a cigarette.
Little
But
stress
Kathleen,
smoke.
little stress
Sure.
smoke. But Kathleen sees him, and we see her form an evil plan.
We see her form an opinion. She doesn't say anything here, but I still do hate her.
We already know. We know what she's thinking.
Yeah.
So at the next meeting, there, whoever it reads the agenda brings up the name again, and Kathleen, is like, actually, I have something else to tell everyone. And she tells them that she saw Rick smoking and that it's hypocritical to have a polluter on an anti-pollution committee.
And it says Rick has to go. Rick is just kind of like, so what? I wasn't hurting anybody. Except yourself, Rick.
Yeah, Rick is like, I was just having a smoke.
Is it littering? Just like, I guess if he littered, like, and just
No,
like,
she's saying that
toss-
it's like pollution, that smoking is like pollution.
Yeah.
is it though? Like, I don't know.
Also,
Yeah, this was a little I was also a little confused by what her actual problem was, but I think it's saying like secondhand smoke is like pollution, so he's causing pollution by smoking, but it doesn't totally track for me.
Obviously bullshit charges.
Kathleen
from
is just a little
Kathleen.
baby cop.
Eh.
After which Rick just rips her a brand new asshole.
What a bunch of jerks. Call yourself Action Committee? What action? All you ever do is talk. Who needs this garbage?
And then, he leaves, he storms out, he punches some lockers again, and Kathleen is basically giving like a huge I told you so to Caitlyn. And she's like, I told you Rick was no good, which I just think is like this poor kid, like he can't seem to do anything right in this girl's eyes, and for no reason at all, she's decided, even though she doesn't know him and has barely interacted with him, and the only interactions they've really had are him having ideas for the club that she started and how it can be more successful and trying to help. She's decided like she doesn't want him in the club. She doesn't like him. He's a quote unquote criminal. And so she's like going to take any opportunity to ostracize him, which I think is just like, it's just really, it's a very like carceral approach to the whole thing. Like she's very much like, we're going to cut you off from something that, by the way, could be like a good thing. You know, being in extracurricular activities is good for, it's good for your transcript, it's good for socializing, it helps keep kids like out of trouble, or even if he's not getting, it doesn't sound like he gets into trouble. Like honestly, it's just like it's somewhere for him to be around other people his age. He's
And
got
to be engaged.
yeah, to do something that he cares about, that he clearly has a lot of good ideas about, that he can practically chip in with and help with. And it just sucks that Kathleen, instead of thinking, oh, this kid's not very smart and he's a criminal, like how can we maybe like include him? You know what I mean? And instead she's like, how can we make sure that we gatekeep activism, essentially?
Mm-hmm. From the people who are actually affected by the pollution that they're talking about.
Absolutely. A very good point. Like he seems to be the only one in the room who actually has lived near this factory and has been affected personally by its pollution. Lived experience is like an extremely valid reason to get involved in action like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kathleen tells Caitlin that she made a mistake and she can't be perfect all the time, which is also so rude. Like,
I mean, obviously Kathleen has some serious power issues and jealousy issues. Like you can see that she's got a problem with Caitlin too, and she's also possibly acting out and taking it out on Rick to get at Caitlin. I think that that's also maybe at play here.
mm-hmm. Even though Caitlin is only trying to like do things for this committee. But yeah, Kathleen just, it seems very threatened by like everybody. And also, I mean, I do feel like I've experienced this attitude in trying to get involved with political like kind of action groups before, where sometimes it feels like some of the people in charge don't necessarily want to grow the movement. They want to like just be right about something.
Definitely.
And so I do think that there's some people who get involved kind of like Kathleen just to like be an authority or to have some kind of authority. And they unfortunately keep out people who are actually looking to like, yeah, do direct action or like be more involved.
Kathleen's like a black square on Instagram activist.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, if Kathleen was an adult right now, she, I think, would be an all lives matter person. But I'm just saying, if we're going with like Kathleen as a member of any kind of progressive movement, which already feels totally disconnected from who she is, then if she was going to take any kind of action, it would be just this base level. This helps absolutely no one. Like she's not going to donate to any bail funds because she's going to
just vote.
Right. She's going to judge the way that people are doing things. So Rick is waiting for Caitlin after the meeting. He calls the committee a bunch of do-gooders. And then Caitlin calls Rick stupid and says that she tried to help him. And he's like, bro, actually,
I helped you. I thought up the announcements. I went to the factory. I made you go in. So I'm not rich like you. So I don't do too good in school. That doesn't make me a charity case. I joined the dumb committee because I liked you, not because I needed your help.
You blew it.
Rick absolutely kills it in this episode, which I really love. Like, I love that he stands up for himself and he's just like, I didn't ask for your help. Like, I'm not your charity case. I'm like, he's a human being.
And she hasn't done anything for him.
No.
Except like wanted him to like suppress who he is to try to fit into this group that isn't even like very kind to her. Like Kathleen's not even nice to Caitlin. And so it's like, why are we all like bending over backwards for this person who treats everybody terribly?
Absolutely. And who you know that at a moment's notice, if she's upset with you, she's going to lash out. I mean, only a few episodes ago, she was going around telling people that Caitlin was a lesbian.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like she's been horrible to her on several occasions already, and we're only on episode 10.
And yet that's her friend, and Rick is like seen as the outsider. Caitlin is also wearing my look of the week.
Ooh, tell
Which
us
is
about
like,
it.
it's like a white turtleneck and then some kind of like, I don't know, crocheted like V-neck pink sweater tucked into these like gray slacks. And then she has like a puffy green coat that she's holding over her shoulder. It's a look.
It's a look. It's
Strong.
very right now.
Yes, absolutely. Good layers. So in the next scene, Arthur shows up to school looking so bummed. So I think this is like the day of Yick's presentation. So Arthur has run out of time on his scheme to put the vase back together. So Yick asks for his vase, and this is when Arthur finally shows him the current state of the vase, which is not good. Yick is mad, but Arthur tells him to just tell everyone, how he and his family actually came to Canada. And this is when Yick is like, who cares about boat people?
I would just like to say here, I think that Arthur is not appropriately apologetic, considering he is still under the guise that this vase is thousands of years old.
Yeah, but he's like, well, just tell him about, he's not even like concerned about the this heirloom that he broke. He's like, just tell him about the other story. It's a good story. So they're only thinking about this like immediate presentation and not the fact that this is allegedly a very important vase.
Really quick, Arthur's like black jacket with a sweater under it and a backpack. I wear this outfit. This is an outfit that I wear at least once a week, so it had to be my look of the week.
You and Arthur both look great.
Yes.
Love this look. It is a good look.
I also love this look.
It's a go-to look for sure. So in Miss Avery's class, we hear Yick's presentation, and he says his family was out at sea for a month. They had to hide from pirates, who sometimes would take the pretty girls, which was disturbing part of that story. But that they all escaped. Oh, and all they escaped with was the clothes that they were wearing, and that's why he doesn't have any heirlooms to show them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know if I missed anything. The story was a little bit longer, but
I'm interested in the Canadian healthcare system and whether or not it includes therapy.
Oh boy.
yeah. I'm going to say what is this, 87? Probably not.
Probably not. They probably just it was the late 80s. They probably just gave him Ritalin.
Yeah.
That's
They're
what every
like,
kid got.
You're extremely messy. Here's some Ritalin.
Yeah, for sure.
And Arthur was right. Everyone is really stoked on this story and talking to him after class. But Arthur still thinks that the vase was an heirloom. So after everyone else kind of leaves, he hands Yick some money, and he says he'll give him his allowance, and then he'll get a job, and we'll give him his salary every year to pay him back for the vase. And then this is when Yick finally tells him, bro, that was just a cheap vase I bought. It's fine.
You broomhead.
You broomhead.
Yep. We get a broomhead from Arthur.
A very wholesome broomhead drop.
And they're both kind of why didn't you just tell me what was happening? And then they just kind of laugh and they're like, whatever, we're friends again.
They're always friends again.
Adorable.
True, because they have no other friends.
No one on this podcast can relate whatsoever.
Yeah, no, totally can't relate to that.
I've always had so many friends.
It's like too many friends, So Caitlin finds Rick after school and apologizes, but she says, but smoking is really stupid, which is true. She thanks him for helping with the petition and says that he was right about the factory. They just ignored them. And then Rick says they should call the paper and tell them what happened and how they got all these signatures and they went to talk to, the owner of this factory and he just ignored a bunch of teenagers. This idea earns him a kiss on the cheek from Caitlin. She tells him he's brilliant, and then he looks around and shushes her and tells her he has a reputation.
Sure.
And then we get a
Sure.
freeze frame on Rick. Why not?
Can't relate.
I personally really related to Rick. I think that when I was younger, I was the kind of person who would if there was a petition, I'd be the one who was like, yeah, I can take that in. Or I think that I was always very much like, okay, well, what can we do about this situation? And even as an adult, I see that in myself, sometimes to my detriment, sometimes the detriment of my loved ones. As previously mentioned, I am aggressively helpful, but I think that I prefer to at least feel like I'm doing something. And I also related to Caitlin though, because I did grow up in a more privileged situation. And sometimes I was maybe not considering the situations of those around me when I was in middle school and high school. I didn't know, just what other people's lives were like. And so I think that's something that I learned more as I got older. So I really related to Caitlin in the sort of assuming everyone sort of has what you have and then realizing that's wrong and apologizing.
Mm-hmm. For me, I identified with Arthur, even though I could understand where Yick was coming from with his family history. I don't think I ever would have tried to come up with an elaborate scheme to hide what was going on in my life. I probably would have just regressed and not said anything. But yeah, I would absolutely biff it like Arthur did and wreck something by accident and not know what to do and then try and hide the truth until it's too late and then have to, whatever. Absolutely.
I also related to Caitlin. I would try to get involved in political groups and would just end up disappointed in their leadership, but then also not doing anything to address that at all. And she also seems like a perfectionist who's too worried with how others perceive her, but she's trying, which I also related to. So, friends, what did we learn today?
Not sure if I necessarily learned this, but for me, this episode reiterated that it's weird being the different kid, being the kid with an atypical family background, and when there's something about you that, through no fault of your own, separates you from your peers, it can be really alienating. And there's unfortunately no good way out of that. And it doesn't actually work out in every situation, but sometimes it can be a strength and something that makes you indispensable.
Again, I'm not sure I learned this in this episode, but I think that we all saw demonstrated that there are a lot of different ways to be smart and that doing well in school is really just one way. Rick is really creative. He has a lot of lived experience and real life knowledge of direct action. And he had a lot of solutions and ideas for the club, more than Kathleen did. And that we should listen to people who are different than us and listen to their experiences. And it will inform the way that we think about the world.
I think that we learned that true change starts from the bottom up. Rick had way more valuable insight than Kathleen because he had actual lived experience and was more motivated to actually try to create change. Kathleen was in a leadership position, but she totally centered herself instead of the cause and used her status to put other people down instead of bringing them into the movement.
Damn, that was fucking good. We did learn that today.
Hell yeah,
we learned
did.
the shit out of that today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow us on social media and look at our outfits of the week or our utilitarian props of the week, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. It's at I'm Sorry Okay Pod. That's okay spelled OKAY. You can also email us if you've got any burning questions or comments at I'm Sorry Okay Pod @gmail.com. Again, okay is spelled OKAY.
So that's it for Smokescreen, and next week we're watching It's Late.